Let's start with the core of the pharmaceutical industry, its transformation from a noble cause, saving lives, to a profit-driven machine. Decades ago, medicine was rooted in prevention and public health, but today, it's a trillion-dollar industry where the primary goal isn't curing disease, but maximizing shareholder returns. Imagine this: companies spend billions developing drugs, but what if their blockbuster drug, something like a cholesterol-lowering statin, brings in $20 billion a year? Suddenly, curing the root problem, like poor dietary habits, becomes less attractive. After all, lifestyle changes don't generate profits, but lifetime prescriptions do. One key example is how pharmaceutical companies manipulate clinical trials. These companies have mastered the art of cherry-picking data, trials showing negative results, shelved or hidden in obscure medical journals. The studies showing positive results paraded around to doctors and the media like a victory flag. This selective transparency creates the illusion that medications are safer and more effective than they truly are. Let's break this down with an analogy. It's like a car company knowing a vehicle has a defective engine. Instead of fixing it, they push the car onto the market, confident the cost of repairs and lawsuits will be outweighed by profits. The pharmaceutical world works similarly, except the stakes aren't about cars breaking down, they're about lives. Drugs marketed aggressively often include hidden risks. Antidepressants like SSRIs were once heralded as a miracle for mental health. But in the 2000s, internal memos from companies like GlaxoSmithKline revealed that these medications carried a heightened risk of suicidal ideation in young users, something conveniently left out of promotional material. The damage? Generations of patients misled by aggressive marketing campaigns prioritizing revenue over safety. And let's not forget the opioid epidemic. Purdue Pharma's OxyContin was marketed as a safe painkiller, downplaying its highly addictive nature. The company earned billions, but at what cost? Over 500,000 lives lost to opioid overdoses in the US alone. Why does this happen? One word: incentives. Pharmaceutical companies are incentivized to create medications that treat symptoms rather than cures. Why? Treating chronic conditions guarantees a steady stream of income. If a patient needs medication for life, the company makes more than if the disease were eradicated entirely. Here's a shocking statistic. In 2022, the global pharmaceutical market was worth over $1.4 trillion. The top 10 companies alone generated over $400 billion in revenue, and they spend more on marketing their drugs, $30 billion in the US alone, than on research and development. This means your doctor is more likely to hear about a drug from a pharmaceutical sales rep than an independent, unbiased source. So, what's the impact on you, the patient? Doctors who genuinely want to help their patients often rely on biased information provided by pharmaceutical companies. This leads to overprescription and a focus on medications over preventative measures. Take statins, for example. Medications designed to lower cholesterol. They're among the most prescribed drugs in the world. Yet research shows that for people without prior heart disease, the benefits are minimal. But because these drugs are marketed as a cure-all for heart health, millions take them unnecessarily, exposing themselves to side effects like muscle pain, liver damage, and increased diabetes risk. And this isn't just a healthcare problem, it's a societal one. We've created a system where diseases aren't challenges to overcome, but opportunities to profit. When we think of food, most of us imagine nourishment, comfort, even joy. But what if I told you the food we trust is quietly working against us? Behind every neatly packaged product is an industry that prioritizes profit over health, hiding harmful ingredients and distorting the very concept of nutrition. Let's start with industrial farming. What was once a localized, seasonal process of growing food has morphed into a mechanized, chemically intensive system. Crops are sprayed with glyphosate, a pesticide linked to cancer by some studies, and currently embroiled in lawsuits across the US. Farmers are pushed to prioritize yields over quality, leading to nutrient-depleted soil and ultimately nutrient-depleted food. What does that mean for us? Even the healthy fruits and vegetables we eat may no longer provide the vitamins and minerals we think they do. But it doesn't stop there. Once these crops leave the fields, they enter factories, where they're processed and transformed into products designed to maximize shelf life and taste, often at the expense of our health. Let's talk about trans fats, for example. These artificially modified fats were once hailed as revolutionary, but were later found to increase bad cholesterol and heart disease risk. Even food labels play a role in this deception. Terms like organic and natural are often misleading. Did you know the FDA has no strict definition for the term natural? That means a product labeled as such might still be filled with additives and preservatives. It's a marketing tactic, not a guarantee of health. Take high fructose corn syrup, for example. It's in everything from sodas to bread, and studies link it to obesity and diabetes. Yet its inclusion on a label is often buried in tiny print, far from the glowing claims of health benefits on the front of the package. This manipulation extends to the very fabric of how we eat. Fast food chains and processed snacks dominate our diets, particularly in lower-income communities, where access to fresh and affordable produce is limited. This isn't by chance, it's by design. The food industry spends billions annually lobbying against stricter regulations, while simultaneously marketing addictive sugar-laden products to children and families. Consider glyphosate again, the same chemical sprayed on crops that ends up in your breakfast cereal. Independent studies have found glyphosate residues in popular brands. For example, a well-known oat-based cereal marketed to children was shown to contain trace levels of this pesticide. These residues may seem minor, but over time, they build up in our systems, potentially contributing to chronic illnesses and even cancer. Then there's the environmental toll. Industrial farming doesn't just harm our bodies, it harms the planet. The overuse of fertilizers and pesticides pollutes waterways, kills beneficial insects like bees, and accelerates climate change through greenhouse gas emissions. This damage to ecosystems directly impacts the quality of the food we consume, creating a vicious cycle. Unhealthy soil leads to unhealthy plants, which lead to unhealthy humans. And here's the real kicker. Much of this could be avoided if the food industry prioritized sustainability over profit. But instead, we're left to navigate a maze of misleading labels, hidden toxins, and food that contributes to the very illnesses pharmaceutical companies profit from treating. So, what's the connection between food and pharma? It's a system designed to feed into itself, making us reliant on medications for conditions often rooted in poor dietary choices. The system is perfectly engineered to keep us sick. This isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's a cycle you're part of every day, whether you realize it or not. Think about this. The food industry produces cheap, highly processed foods loaded with sugar, trans fats, and chemicals. Over time, these foods lead to chronic conditions like obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. And then, when our bodies can no longer take it, we turn to the pharmaceutical industry. A pill for your high blood pressure, another for your cholesterol, maybe insulin injections. The very industries profiting from your ill health are the ones creating and maintaining this cycle. It's a setup that ensures we stay dependent, not just on medications, but on a system that thrives off our suffering. Here's the catch. Unhealthy diets don't just happen in isolation. They're carefully designed. Fast food companies and snack manufacturers create addictive products by combining sugar, salt, and fat in just the right proportions to make them irresistible. This isn't an accident. The term bliss point was coined by food scientists to describe the precise formula that keeps you craving more. Take soda, for instance, one of the most iconic examples. A single can of soda can contain upwards of 40 grams of sugar, nearly double the daily recommended intake. The sugar spike might give you energy for a moment, but it's quickly followed by a crash that leaves you reaching for more. Over time, these habits lead to insulin resistance, setting the stage for type 2 diabetes, a condition now so common that nearly 1 in 10 Americans have it. And who benefits most from that? Pharmaceutical companies selling insulin. But the connection goes deeper. Let's talk about hypertension, a condition affecting millions in the USA. High sodium diets, common in processed and fast foods, are a major contributor. When was the last time you checked the sodium content of a frozen meal? Some can contain over 1,500 milligrams. That's your entire daily limit in just one sitting. The result? An epidemic of high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. Here's the kicker. The medications prescribed for these issues don't cure the root cause. Blood pressure pills, for example, manage symptoms. They don't reverse the damage caused by years of unhealthy eating. And while these medications are sometimes necessary, they are also a lifelong commitment, creating a constant revenue stream for Big Pharma. It's a cycle. Unhealthy food leads to disease, disease leads to medication, and medication leads to profits. Let's not forget the marketing. The same companies selling you unhealthy food also sponsor studies to downplay its dangers. Fast food ads glorify indulgence, while pharmaceutical commercials promise quick fixes. It's a 1-2 punch. The food industry makes you sick, and the pharmaceutical industry promises to make you better. But are we really getting better? According to the CDC, 6 in 10 adults in the USA have at least one chronic disease. Many of these conditions, like diabetes, heart disease, and obesity, are directly linked to lifestyle and diet. Yet despite all our medical advancements, these numbers continue to rise. Why? Because prevention doesn't make money. Treatment does. This system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended. The question is, will you continue to play along, or will you take control? Let's begin with a sobering fact. The industries responsible for feeding us and keeping us healthy are also among the biggest contributors to environmental destruction. Industrial farming and pharmaceutical production aren't just harming our bodies, they're damaging the planet. Take water pollution, for instance. Pharmaceutical waste from factories, along with runoff from industrial farms loaded with pesticides and antibiotics, flows directly into our rivers and streams. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, traces of pharmaceuticals have been found in over 80% of tested waterways in the United States. These contaminants aren't just bad for fish and wildlife, they eventually make their way back into our water supply. The cycle is as toxic as it sounds. Now, consider the soil beneath our feet. Industrial farming practices have stripped it of vital nutrients, replacing natural fertility with synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. These chemicals, while boosting short-term yields, leave long-term damage. The result? Degraded soil that requires even more chemical input to produce crops, locking farmers and the planet into an unsustainable cycle. What's worse, antibiotics used in livestock farming don't just stay on the farm. Around 80% of antibiotics sold in the US are used in animals, not humans. These drugs end up in the soil, water, and food we consume, fueling the rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. The CDC has labeled this a major global health threat, with infections resistant to antibiotics killing thousands of Americans annually. But the harm doesn't stop at soil and water. Let's talk about air pollution. Pharmaceutical factories release volatile organic compounds, VOCs, into the atmosphere, contributing to smog and respiratory problems. Meanwhile, industrial farms emit massive amounts of methane, a greenhouse gas over 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide, due to livestock operations. This environmental toll isn't just an inconvenience, it's a direct threat to public health. Polluted air exacerbates conditions like asthma and heart disease. Polluted water leads to gastrointestinal illnesses and neurological disorders. And depleted soil means less nutritious crops, weakening our immune systems and making us more susceptible to disease. The very systems we rely on are breaking us down. Now, let's connect the dots. Environmental degradation leads to unhealthy ecosystems, which in turn create a struggling human population. And who steps in to save us? The pharmaceutical industry. They offer solutions to the health crises caused by industrial practices, profiting off the damage their counterparts in farming and production helped create. Its vicious cycle, polluted environments, lead to unhealthy bodies. Unhealthy bodies rely on medications. Medications often exacerbate environmental damage during production. The system feeds itself, and we're the ones caught in the middle. What's most tragic is that this isn't a series of unfortunate accidents. It's a predictable consequence of prioritizing profit over sustainability. Whether it's polluted water, antibiotic resistance, or degraded soil, the outcomes are the same. A world where both humans and nature pay the price for corporate greed. So, where does that leave us? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The system is designed to prioritize profit over people, but that doesn't mean we're powerless. Start with small, informed choices. Research the food you eat. Avoid ultra-processed products. Question the medications you're prescribed. Ask your doctor about natural or lifestyle-based alternatives. And demand transparency from the corporations and regulatory bodies that control these industries. Knowledge is power. And change starts with you. By making conscious decisions, you can disrupt this harmful cycle and take control of your health. Remember, it's not about perfection. It's about awareness and action. Together, we can demand better for ourselves, our families, and future generations. Stay tuned for more insights into breaking free from this system and reclaiming your well-being.